It's Tuesday, but we're doing Brunch with Bernie, an hour late, but it's all great. It's wonderful to have Senator Sanders here with us in this last week of the last week of 2014. Senator, welcome back.
Great to be with you, Tom. And let me just take this opportunity to wish all of the listeners and viewers a very, very happy holiday season and a wonderful new year.
Yeah, I agreed with the sentiment, and the same to you and your family and all the people who work with you in your office. They're just great people there.
Thank you.
Please give them all our best regards. What's on your mind these days?
Well, I'll tell you, we're coming to the end of the year, and I wrote a piece in the Huffington Post which kind of summarized my views that while there are a million different issues that are out there, and every day there's something that's happening, all of which is important, it is most important, I think, that we continue to focus on the issues that impact the day-to-day lives of millions of people. And sometimes, I think, given all of the noise and the corporate media and all of the distractions, we don't do that. But at the end of the day, no one quite knows what makes a happy life. And then, we know there are poor people who are very happy and rich people who are not. But I've always believed that at the end of the day, economic security is of enormous importance, that if one doesn't know how you're going to be paying your bills, whether or not you can afford to go to a doctor, whether or not you're able to place your kid in decent child care, whether you can take care of your elderly parents, if you don't have that type of security, life becomes much more difficult and much more stressful. And I think that we don't focus enough on those very, very basic issues which impact tens of millions of Americans. There are people listening to this show right now who have lost their jobs, have been out there for month after month after month trying to find work, can't find it. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about real unemployment in this country being 11%, youth unemployment being 18%, and African-American youth unemployment being close to 30%. What does that mean? What does that mean to the lives of people? We don't talk too much about the fact that we're the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people as a right. What does that mean to people's lives? How many people die each year because by the time they find a doctor, it's too late? Or how many people go bankrupt because they can't afford to pay their medical bills? We don't talk about the fact that that while Republicans want to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, many large corporations enjoy enormous tax breaks, and you have wealthy people in this country who pay an effective tax rate lower than a truck driver or a police officer. We don't talk about what infrastructure means in this country and the fact that we drive on roads which are in disrepair. We look at bridges which you can't go over anymore because they're so dangerous, that we go to airports where we wait around for hours because our whole aviation system is way behind where it should be, or our rail system is in much worse shape than many other countries around the world or less developed. We don't talk about the fact, and this one blows me away. I mean, it's just an indication of a country moving in the wrong direction. You and I remember, and people who are older remember that 45 years ago in America, you can go to a great public university, University of California, City University of New York, state colleges all over America. Tuition was virtually free, and today it's unaffordable. How does that happen? How does it happen that we go from tuition being virtually free, people leaving school with very little debt, to a situation today where hundreds of thousands of young people can't afford to go to college, and others are leaving school with just the saddle of debt right on their backs, which lasts for decades. So, what I think is that we have got to stay focused on those day-to-day issues which impact people's lives. I was at a rally last month in Washington, D.C., and similar rallies took place all over the country. You had workers who worked for McDonald's and Burger King and the other fast food restaurants standing up and saying, we can't make it on $7.50 or $8 an hour. We need to raise the minimum wage. And then you talk to women who are saying, why is it I do the same job as the guy across the room from me, and he's making 20% more than I am because we don't have pay equity in this country for women workers. And meanwhile, since the great recession of Wall Street recession of 2008, 95% of all new income goes to the top 1%, and you have one family, the Walton family of Walmart, owning more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. So I think it's important, and the media doesn't do this, and they won't do it, but it's important for the American people to stay focused on those issues and to say, okay, what are the solutions? Is it really impossible with all of the productivity that's out there, all of that new technology that's out there, to create an economy in which working people have jobs and receive decent pay? Is that really impossible to do? Is it impossible for the United States of America to join the rest of the world, rest of the industrialized world, in guaranteeing health care to all people? Is it really impossible to have a tax system which says to the wealthy and large corporations, sorry, you're part of America, you have got to begin paying your fair share of taxes? Is it impossible to end the horror of America having by far the highest rate of childhood poverty in the industrialized world? 1 out of 5 of our kids live in poverty. What does that say about the future of America if we can't treat our children better than that? Is it impossible to say that when you're old, you can retire with dignity, not have to live on $12,000 or $14,000 a year, in some cases even less than that, that we can expand Social Security benefits rather than cut them? So my point is that every day you turn on television, there's another news alert, and something happened in Oklahoma, and something happened in California, and something happened in Vermont. All of which is important. I don't mean to minimize anything, but it is terribly important that we look at what's happening to tens of millions of people in this country and ask, why does the middle class continue to disappear? Why is the gap between the very, very rich and everybody else growing wider? Why is it that we once led the world in terms of the percentage of our people who graduated college, and today we're in 12th place? Why? How does that happen? What do we need to do to change those things? How do we rebuild the middle class? How do we rebuild our infrastructure? How do we create the best educational system in the world? So the point is, I think we can't afford to get distracted. We have to involve people in the political process. We have to ask the right questions. We have to educate. We have to organize. And when we do that, I think we're going to do very, very well. I'm just reminded, as you may know, I'm going to become the ranking member of the U.S. Senate Budget Committee, which means leader of the opposition. So I'll be in a position to contrast the progressive views that I believe are held by the vast majority of the American people with some of the right-wing views held by the Republicans. And just one issue comes to mind that I'll be talking a whole lot about. The Republicans will probably bring up their desire to cut Social Security, and that means either cut back on the cost of living adjustments through a chain CPI, or maybe extend force people to work until 70 or 72, whatever it may be, before they can collect Social Security. And I'm looking at a poll right now that was done in August 2014 by Lake Research Partners, which talk about the fact that the overwhelming majority of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents want to expand Social Security, not cut it. So those are the issues that I think we have to organize on and we have to educate on.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. He'll be taking your calls in our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie, here Tuesday. We're live right now here on the Thom Hartmann Program, 15 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back with your calls for the Senate.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov. I got my copy of the Bernie Buzz this morning, and it is, you got to subscribe. It's amazing. It's about TPP. And welcome back, Senator. Take some calls.
Let's do it.
Okay, Elliot in Mission Viejo, California. You are. And thanks for watching Free Speech TV. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, thank you, and Happy New Year to both of you.
Thank you.
My question, very specifically, couldn't President Obama have used the line item veto to remove the loophole in the budget that ensures banks when they fail in their casino-type investments.
The president doesn't have a line item veto, and I don't think he should have a line item veto. What he could have done is to veto that entire legislation. That he certainly could have done, and said, I am not going to sign any legislation which repeals an important provision of Dodd-Frank, which once again forces the American taxpayer to be holden and to be at risk for these incredibly risky Wall Street derivatives speculations. So that's what he could have done, and that's what he should have done, in my view.
Mike in Winnacone, Wisconsin. Am I saying that right, Mike?
Yep, first-time listener, first-time caller, long-time listener. My question is, nobody's entertained the thought of taxing the campaign contributions. My thought is to tax them 100%, and if it's a federal election, it goes to the federal tax base, and if it's a state election, it goes to the state tax base. That's if you invest $1 or $1 million, that these wealthy people will own that politician for $2 million, if just as fast as they'll own them for $1 million.
Mike, I think you're touching on an enormously important issue, and that is the degree to which big money controls the political process. And you're absolutely right that these guys who contribute hundreds of millions of dollars into the political process know exactly what they're doing, and that is to own the political process. I'm not sure that your solution is the way to address that. I think if somebody wants to make a $20 contribution, they should be allowed to do that without being taxed. I think the way you do it is through strong campaign finance reform and through public funding of elections and through the overturning through a constitutional amendment of Citizens United, which allows the Koch brothers and other billionaires to spend incredible sums of money. So you're touching on what might be the most important issue in terms of the political process, and that is big money buying elections. But I think there are other solutions to that problem that are better.
Norma, we got a minute to the break. A quick question for Senator Sanders?
Is there any way you can repeal this clause bailing out international banks and international investors who probably do not support the American way?
The answer is absolutely. Of course we can, and of course we should. And there is legislation out there. I have some legislation that does it. Other people do. So the answer is yes. I mean, the provision that was placed in that appropriations bill can be removed by law. Of course it can. And legislation can be passed, which, for example, does away with the ability of corporations to stash their money in the Cayman Islands and elsewhere and not pay any taxes on it. So the answer to your question is, Norma, absolutely it can be done and it should be done.
Do you think, given Republican control of the House and Senate, there's any chance it will be done in the next 2 years?
No, I don't.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate kicker, the thing that we've got, threshold we've got to overcome. Senator Bernie Sanders is with us. We'll be right back with more of your calls for the senator right after this. Stick around. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on Tuesday for the end of the year. Glenn in Portland, Oregon. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Senator. I was wondering if you would talk a little bit about what's been going on with Vermont single-payer health care, and what does it mean for the nation? Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. The governor of Vermont decided that at this point he couldn't come up with a financial package which would enable him to go forward with a single-payer program. To me, that was very, very disappointing. My understanding is that the vision is not gone, but it is being delayed. I can't tell you exactly. I haven't been involved in the day-to-day details, and in fact need to talk to the governor at some length about this and where we go from here. But it is something that is disappointing to me and to many people in Vermont, because I think the evidence is pretty clear internationally that when you have a national health care program of almost whatever kind, it becomes much more cost-effective than the current healthcare system that we have in America, in which insurance companies and drug companies make enormous amounts of profit. So I think we're going to have to go back to the table and figure out where we go from here, and I will be working with some of the strong single-payer advocates in the state of Vermont to do that. But the goal is to still have the state go forward with a single-payer program and become a model for the country.
Ernie in Chicago, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hey, Senator Sanders and Mr. Hartman, thank you for all you do. I just wanted to talk about, watching Meet the Press this Sunday and how good Wall Street is doing. Like, when they talk about that, like, they're talking to maybe 100,000 people in the country because they're not speaking to me. And whenever I hear them talk about how well they're doing and so many of us on Main Street are still struggling, I'm just like, how much more of this do we have to continue to listen to until our needs are seriously being addressed as far as economics goes as it relates to the middle class and the working poor? And so, who are they really talking to, and how much longer do we have to listen to it before we can affect it?
Ernie, thanks for asking that question. It is an excellent question. And it talks to, in the deepest sense, who owns the media and what their interests are. The fact of the matter is Wall Street and the stock market are doing phenomenally well. The stock market is almost at an all-time high. But the other reality is that the middle class in America is in significant decline. The median, I wouldn't use the word average, the median worker in America, the male worker, is making something like $800 less in inflation accounted for dollars than he made 40 years ago. The median woman worker, the woman right in the middle of the economy, is making over $1,000 less than she made 7 years ago. So what it seems to me, and I try to make this point at the beginning of the program, that what Ernie is saying is exactly right. We have got to focus on what's happening to ordinary people. Yeah, the stock market is doing very, very well. Corporate profits are very, very good. But what does that mean to ordinary people? My old friend Jim Hightower from Texas also often talks about, we don't have to talk about Dow Jones all the time. Let's talk about Doug Jones. Let's talk about the average guy. What's happening to his life? What's happening to her life? And we don't do that enough. And when we do that, we find that ordinary people in this country are not where they were 20, 30, 40 years ago in terms of wages, in terms of income, in terms of educational opportunities for their kids, in terms of health care in many respects. They're falling behind, while the people on top, including the people who invest heavily in the stock market, are doing very, very well. So I think Ernie is exactly right, and we have got to focus on what's happening to ordinary people and how we improve lives in the middle.
Chris in Darlington, South Carolina. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, it's an honor to speak with you, Senator Sanders. Sometimes I think you're the lone voice of sanity in that sea of illogic in Washington.
Well, thank you very much for that, Chris. Not quite true, but thank you for the compliment.
But my question is about the VA. I mean, I've seen some great programs like the Wounded Warrior Project, and there's several others that are less well known. The crime to me is that there's a need for them. Why can't we give the VA adequate funding to take care of the returning war veterans that we sent off to get maimed and crippled, for us?
Well, thanks very much, Chris, for the question. And I speak to you as the chairman of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, and will be, I guess, for a couple of more weeks until the Republicans take over the Senate. And I agree with you. We have I think President Obama has produced some good budgets for the VA. But given the fact that we have, among many other issues, some 500,000 men and women coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan with post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury, not to mention those who have lost legs and arms and eyesight and hearing and all of that. It is clear that we need a very strong budget to make sure that, among other things, when folks who come home have mental health issues, they get the care they need and they get it as soon as possible. Now, I'm happy to say that we passed a bipartisan VA budget for health care in the Veterans Administration for $16.5 billion, I believe. And $5 billion of that is going to be going to making sure the VA has the resources to hire the doctors and nurses and other medical personnel that they need, and $10 billion is going to go to make sure that we do away with the long waiting lines that exist in some facilities around the country. So I think we are making some progress, but you're absolutely right. We owe it to the men and women who put their lives on the line to defend us, to make sure that when they come home, they get the best health care possible.
It's Brunch with Bernie on the Thom Hartmann Program. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls in our national town hall meeting. Back with more of your questions for Bernie right after this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-536-2370.
And be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov. You can subscribe to the Bernie Buzz, his newsletter, and it's a great news content site, too. Minutes before the hour. Welcome back to the place where despair is not an option. Get out there and get active. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on Tuesday, end of the year, this kind of end of the year week. And Senator Sanders on the line with us for our national town hall meeting. Senator, you're here?
I'm right here.
Oh, great. Okay. Matt in East Jordan, Michigan. You are on the air with Senator Sanders. Matt?
Yeah, thank you. Senator.
Sure.
I just wish out the Bluetooth. Quick aside, I was fortunate enough to graduate from Berkeley in 1980 at a time when you go to the big university for a mere $400 a quarter. Anyway, because of the despicable attack that's been launched on Mayor de Blasio, I last night decided to review a bunch of articles about the similar attack that was launched against Bruce Springsteen in 2000 after he wrote the song 41 Shots about the shooting of Amadillo Diallo. And it was just Mayor Giuliani spearheaded that attack against Bruce Springsteen, and the NYPD had various demonstrations and refused to give him a police escort to Shea Stadium and whatnot. Just a similar kind of ugly attack. But Springsteen, unlike Mayor de Blasio, he's a private citizen and entertainer. De Blasio is a political official. My question is, when you have a police department engaged in overtly political acts, first of all, is that legal? Can that legally be challenged? And secondly, I mean, isn't that basically the definition of a police state? And I'll take your answer off the air. Thank you.
Well, I don't know exactly the answer to that. Police officers have a right to exercise their constitutional rights. But to answer your question in the broader sense, I think de Blasio in New York is trying to address what is a national problem. And the national problem is that for many, many years, as I think every black parent in America knows, their kids who walk the streets stand a much greater chance of being stopped and frisked and harassed by police officers than white kids. That's just an absolute fact. And I think what we are trying to see around this country is an effort to reform police in that regard. Now, I'm a former mayor, and I can tell you that the job of a police officer is an enormously difficult job with a whole lot of stress, having to make decisions in a fraction of a second, and it's a tough life. So I think what we have to do is, number one, respect police officers, but we also have to demand that police departments all over this country train police officers in a way that do not harass people because of their color. And I think that is what de Blasio is attempting to do in New York.
John in Vernon Hills, Illinois. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, this is John.
Yep.
And I just wanted to make a comment. I think you, Bernie, and Elizabeth Warren are the absolute two best senators we have in this country. Please run for president. There was a snippet on MSNBC this morning that Ready for Hillary is losing ground, and Ready for Bernie is flying. Do it, Senator. We love you.
Well, John, thank you very much. And it's no great secret that I have been giving some thought to running for president, that I've been going around the country, giving speeches, talking to people, meeting a whole lot of people. And I think what I'm finding is the message that folks like Tom and I talk about a declining middle class and the need for policies to protect ordinary people and making government responsive to average Americans rather than the billionaire class is gaining resonance. There's no question about it. But, what we're faced with in terms of running an election is to understand that the opponents will have unlimited sums of money, and by that I really mean unlimited sums of money. And, we have to figure out how you can run an effective grassroots campaign, and can we put together the kind of organizational support that we need to run that type of campaign. So, John, that's what I'm wrestling with right now. I think our message is right. I think it's a message that the vast majority of middle-class people feel strongly about, but I don't want to do this thing unless it is done very, very well. It won't be good for anybody if we don't do it well, and I'm trying to figure out how we can do that right now. So thanks very much for your support.
Rick in Osceola, Iowa. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Tom. Senator, in this last bill that was passed on the spending, there was something that was hidden in there that I found out in the paper the other day, and it kind of concerned me. And it was that in that was a way to cut the pensions and repeal the 1974 Pensions Insurance Act. So this got passed with this new piece of legislation here. I just wondered what you can tell us about it.
Rick, thanks very much for that question. And number one, you're absolutely right. That provision was in the bill, and that is one of the reasons I voted against that bill. This outrageous provision that rescinded one of the provisions in Dodd-Frank that benefits Wall Street got a whole lot of media attention, but the pension issue did not. What that's about is you have a whole lot of multi-employer pension funds, virtually all with unionized workers, that are in trouble. And my memory is correct, there's about a $80 or $90 billion gap over a 75-year period. In other words, there is just not enough money in some of those funds to pay out all of the retirement benefits that workers were promised. I think that there is a solution to that problem, and I think it was a disastrous idea to tell workers who had worked at a company for 30 or 40 years who are already receiving a certain pension, that pension could be cut by up to 50%, or to tell other workers that the pension they thought they were getting would be much less than what they and their family anticipated. So I thought that was just a very horrible provision, because you don't undermine the promises, commitments that were made to people who worked their entire lives for a company. So that was one of the very strong reasons that I voted against that appropriations bill, and it is an issue that we're going to stay focused on. I do not believe that when a worker is promised a pension that you cut that pension. That is just dead wrong. So, yeah, that is the story, Rick, and we're going to stay working on that.
Ben in Miami, Florida. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Senator Sanders. I've got a question about the Congressional Budget Office. I've recently read that Doug Elmendorf's reappointment as head of CBO is blocked by the new Republican leadership, and that they would like to appoint someone who would use dynamic scoring, which has been a long-time goal of theirs. My question is, how huge of an impact do you feel this will have on the reputation of impartiality and objectivity that CBO has, and their ability to provide Congress with the information you need when evaluating legislation? Thank you.
Great question, and everything you said is exactly correct. Doug Elmendorf, is now the head of the CBO, and his job, which is a very difficult job, is to try to present to Congress objective information about the implications of pieces of legislation and what it means to the budget and the status of the budget and all that stuff. It's tough stuff, and believe me, they're not right all of the time, but I think there is a widespread feeling that Elmendorf he's a nonpartisan type guy, and tries to do his best looking at these very complicated and difficult issues in an objective way. Ben is right in saying that we have reason to believe, we have heard, that the Republican leadership wants to get rid of Elmendorf and find somebody who will be sympathetic to the absurd concept of so-called dynamic scoring. And dynamic scoring is what the first George Herbert Walker Bush, but first President Bush, called voodoo economics. You remember that, Tom?
I remember it well.
All right. And what, the theory is, it's a wonderful theory propagated by the wealthy and their think tanks that just miraculously, if you give huge tax breaks to the rich and the large corporations, somehow or another, this is going to stimulate the economy, create jobs, and improve life for everybody. There is no economic foundation for that belief. It is a fraud. It is wrong. And it is just a guise and an excuse, a justification to give tax breaks to people who don't need it. And Ben is right. They are looking for some economist. I suppose they can find one. It's some right-wing think tank who believes in that nonsense. We will do everything we can to prevent that from happening. But the Republicans, the Budget Committee actually, on which I serve and will be ranking member, has the right to make that decision as to who the head of the CBO is. We will do our best to prevent them from hiring a person who holds those views, but they have that power.
Senator, we have just 1 minute before we have to hit a break here.
Well, let me just say on that theme of the Budget Committee, one of the great debates that we're going to be having in the next year has to do not only with so-called dynamic scoring, voodoo economics, but it really has to do most significantly with what the priorities of America should be. Should we be giving more tax breaks to people who don't need it? Should we be cutting Social Security and Medicare? Or should we be rebuilding our infrastructure and creating jobs, making sure that the people of this country have the ability to get a college education regardless of their income? Should we be raising the minimum wage? So there's going to be a very, very foundational debate, fundamental debate, about the future of America, and I'm happy to be on the Budget Committee and the ranking member of that committee to participate in that debate.
We will be back with more of your questions for Senator Bernie Sanders right after this. It's Brunch with Bernie here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And visit sanders.senate.gov to sign up for the Bernie Buzz. And you can also find Bernie on Facebook. He's got a very active Facebook page. And welcome back. Judy, watching Free Speech TV on Direct TV in Lakeport, California. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello.
Hey, Judy, how are you?
I'm good, Tom, and Happy New Year. I have a very important question for Senator Sanders. Here goes. With the last elections, the Republicans again demonstrated how they could manipulate the polls by blocking many minority people's vote. In the name of ethics and democracy, there really should be a special election for these people who were blocked from voting. And I was wondering if Senator Sanders could initiate something like this.
Well, Judy, I don't think that that's going to happen. I'm sorry to have to say that. I mean, the election is done with, and people have received their certifications, and they're going to be marching off to Washington or wherever they're going. But the issue that you touch upon is of huge consequence. There are many elections that are decided by 1%, 2%, 0.5%. And if the Republicans are successful in blocking lower-income people or people of color or older people from voting because they don't have various types of voter identification that they can't afford or can't travel to get, it can make a profound difference in American politics. And I think that's just beyond outrageous. I'm a politician, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. But anybody who is so cowardly that he or she needs to deny people the right to vote in order to win should really find another occupation. That's a disgrace. So we have got to do everything that we can, Judy, in one way or another, to make sure that we expand voting rights in this country and not do as the Republicans want to do, which is to suppress voters' ability to participate in the political process.
Keith in Landrum, South Carolina, watching Free Speech TV. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Senator Sanders. Thank you for your service to Vermont and the citizens of the United States. I wrote a blog on ThomHartmann.com on November the 20th. Ted Cruz is right. The Marketplace Fairness Act is bad for business. I've been an avid study of the sales tax legislation trying to go through Congress, and I am very much against it. And I was wondering what your position would be if this comes forward in the next Congress.
Well, I support, this is a tough issue, but the bottom line is that you have small businesses all over this country who are at a financial disadvantage. Somebody walks into their store and pays a tax, and somebody buys the same product on the Internet does not pay that tax, and I think that that's unfair.
It was originally a stimulus for the Internet, wasn't it? But last I looked, Amazon is doing really well.
I think they're doing pretty well, yes.
Yeah, okay. We've got, 20 seconds here. So do you think that's going to come up for a vote?
I think it's being hotly debated and hotly discussed, so I would not be surprised if it comes up. There's a lot of feelings one way or the other on that.
Yeah, it's basically the Internet sellers versus the bricks and mortar sellers?
Yeah.
Presumably? Right. Okay. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls here on Brunch with Bernie, our national town hall meeting on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be right back with more of Senator Sanders right after this. Welcome back to the True People's Media, the Thom Hartmann Program. Senator Bernie Sanders with us, our Brunch with Bernie hour here, our national town hall meeting. Darlene in Newport Beach, California. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Senator. Thank you for all the work you're doing. I was wondering if there's going to be any new incentives and helps for homeless female veterans. I'm one. And there seems to be more physically disabled female veterans, and yet the resources are diminishing. And I see there's opportunities that aren't being addressed locally and around the country. And I'm wondering how, just somebody like me who's in need of the services too can help.
Darlene, let me ask you this. Darlene, you on the phone?
Yes.
Okay. Have you gone into your local VA?
Yes.
Okay, and have you told them about your housing situation?
Yes, they wouldn't help me on Section 8, and so I was evicted. And then there was a big delay for VASH, and that's problematic too. One of the issues is that when you have accessibility needs, it's really hard to get help.
What we have done, what I can tell you, Darlene, is that in recent years, the VA has, in fact, put significant sums of money into homeless efforts to house homeless veterans. I know in Vermont we have a number of new facilities which are working pretty well. I'm trying to think about the best. If you give my office a ring in D.C.,
okay.
Give us a ring there and we'll see what we can do. All right?
All right.
See if we can
so much.
find something. Okay?
Have a wonderful holiday.
You too. Take care, darling.
Thank you, darling. Steve Steve in Phoenix, Arizona. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, Senator Sanders. I'll get to the chase here. With pensions going by the wayside and such, I'd like to see a raise of 50% across the board on Social Security benefits. And some possible solutions might be to raise the Social Security payroll taxes some, lift the payroll tax cap, possibly a national sales tax, and maybe a 5-cent gas tax combo to help fund this and the national highways and infrastructure. And could you please help formulate what it would take to get this going and speak about it on your hopefully upcoming run for president? And this is a hugely populous issue, and it would be greatly appreciated. And happy holidays, Senator, and I'll take the answer off the air, please.
Okay. Well, Steve, you raised some very, very important issues. I don't know that we can raise Social Security benefits by 50%, but I think we can and should raise Social Security benefits, and I'll tell you why. Senior poverty in America is going up. Some of the statistics are just incredible. The number of people who are trying to live, elderly people, on $11,000, $12,000 a year. I don't know, frankly, how you do that, but it certainly means that you're not going to be able to buy the medicine or the food or be able to heat your home appropriately on that type of income. So I think we should raise Social Security benefits. And I think the way you do that is one of the suggestions that Steve made, and that is right now if you're a multimillionaire and you're making $5 million a year and another person who's making $117,000 a year, you're both paying the same amount into the Social Security trust fund. If you what we call scrap that cap, you don't even have to start at 117. You could start at, say, $250,000. If you do that, you'll bring in enough new income into Social Security to, A, extend the life of Social Security for decades more. It's right now strong for the next 19 years. We want it stronger than that for decades more. And second of all, you'll be able to expand benefits, which is what Steve is talking about. And that's legislation that I already have in. Other people have variations on that legislation. But that's the direction I think that we've got to go.
Bob in Belvedere, Illinois. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, good afternoon, Senator Sanders. I highly respect you. I've got a lot to say. I'm going to make it quick. I'm a Democratic county committee person here in Boone County, which is a county that Belvedere, Illinois is in, where we build the Dodgy Darts, a union automobile corporation. When I attend my local Democratic meetings and talk to my fellow committee people and my chairperson and everybody else about organizing unions in other places besides the auto company, they look at me with cross eyes like I'm some kind of a fool. We have a Walmart here that has literally destroyed our city. And I know that Chicago has been pushing back on. They finally got one in.
Bob, forgive the interruption, but we just have 2 minutes left. I need you to get to the question so Bernie can give you an answer.
Sir, please, Senator Sanders, give us some help as far as organizing unions, not only in the North, but especially the southern states. Thank you very much, and I'll listen.
Bob, you make a very, very important point, and I think what many people recognize as one of the very serious problems within the Democratic Party is they have forgotten their history, which is supposed to be representing working people. And if you represent working people, you have to be a strong supporter of trade unionism and have the understanding that workers who are able to collectively negotiate contracts end up doing a lot better than non-union workers in terms of income and benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So I am a very strong believer in growing the trade union movement, in legislation that makes it easier for workers to be able to form a union. Right now it is very hard if you play by all of the rules because employers can bring forth a number of devices and approaches which fire the union organizers, make it harder, stall out the process. So we have got to work very, very hard to make it easier for workers to be able to join unions. I am very supportive of this effort going on all over the country, I think largely supported by the SEIU, which is focusing on low-wage fast food workers and attempting to make it possible for them to organize workers, for Walmart workers to become unionized. to raise the minimum wage. But that is absolutely got to be a focus on any economic agenda that's going to improve life for the middle class.
Senator, thanks so much for being with us today.
All right, my pleasure, Tom.
I truly appreciate it. Senator Bernie Sanders, check out his website at sanders.senate.gov.